And I recognize the member for North Island.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I always find it quite sad to stand in these sorts of debates when we're not really having a debate. We get the Minister giving his preamble about what the bill is about, what he wants us to try and understand from it, and then largely it is members from this side of the House who are giving voice to their communities and giving voice to the concerns of their communities, trying through discussion and through standing up and talking about things, trying to get the issues across. But what I do find very lacking, Madam Speaker, we don't really have a debate. We don't hear the reasoned responses from that side of the House, the government side of the House, to the arguments that this side of the House puts. My colleague from Cowichan Valley had some very valid arguments about the lack of action for communities in real need. And likewise, he's talking about the catalyst, what's happening with catalyst mills. I would like to highlight that what's happening with the catalyst pensioners. We have a lot of people who, whether they've been working in management or they've been working as workers in the mills, whose future could be at risk, who are looking for action from this government, who would like to see legislation, but they get nothing. They don't even get the courtesy of a response through a debate explaining why nothing has been brought in under an amalgam bill like this, Bill 26, the Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations Statutes Amendment Act, which is a bit of an amalgam, why there's nothing there, why there's nothing as a standalone. And I think, Madam Speaker, it's not just the fact that we get a government and government backbenchers, government ministers could join the debate. We see them at other times participating in debate. Not that they just aren't there, but that this could have been an opportunity. This could have been an opportunity to do so much for our forest sector, so much for our forest industry, and this, the 100th anniversary of the Forest Service. And I have to say, I think it's really, yet again, a squandered opportunity. And so it would be very nice to hear from members opposite about why they think this is enough, why they think after 11 years of government, this is all they can give to people in BC. This is it. We have an economy that relies on the forest sector. We have communities that rely on the forest sector. We have an environment that relies on the forest sector. Remember, Madam Speaker, when the environment was the big issue for this government. Climate change, how we were going to protect the environment. Suddenly we were faced with a BC Liberal government that seemed to care about the environment. Even on that stand, they're not standing up and having a debate. So, Madam Speaker, it's our job on this side of the House to voice the views of our communities and voice our concerns about what is in this Act, what isn't in this Act, and what could be done. And I think that what people will hear, what people who, whether they tune in to watch the debate, which I don't know how many people do late at night when they really have insomnia, how many people, if they actually read something about it in the newspapers or on social media or on the internet, whether they plug into it. But I think what they are going to get from this, and when we go back to our constituencies and talk about it, as I know that I do whenever I talk about any piece of legislation, or in fact what has been happening in the legislature, and I take it back to my community, what people will see in this lack of engagement from this government, the lack of engagement from both government ministers and from backbenchers on what is so lacking here and what we could be having, is that we have a government that has effectively just given up. 11 years in power, May 2001, and now just said, it's really not worth it. We're just going to sit back and hope that nobody notices. Let's just hope that nobody notices. We made a lot of mistakes. We've spent an awful lot of money unnecessarily, billions and billions and billions of dollars. We have wasted our prime resource, our forest sector, But if we sit here quietly, maybe no one will notice. Maybe people will forget that while we overspent by billions, hundreds of millions of dollars on convention centres and on roofs for BC Place and on buying out corporate interests, while we've done that, while we've subsidised the oil and gas industry, we have squandered, Madam Speaker, we have squandered the prime resource in our province, our public lands, our forest sector. I think that can be the only reason, Madam Speaker, while this government just sits back and says, we're not going to say a word, don't get people whipped up to speak, don't organise any speakers, we're just going to sit quietly. Because they want people to forget that what is so valuable to our province has been absolutely destroyed by this government. And I say destroyed because you go out to any forest-dependent community, you go out into the bush, whether it is on the island, up the coast, in the interior, wherever you are, you're going to see devastation. You're going to see a level of, and I can use no other word than destruction, Madam Speaker, a level of destruction which is unacceptable. Whether it is the rate of harvesting, we on this side of the House, we've been talking obviously a lot about raw log exports, and we're talking about jobs and how to create economies and economies on our communities. So we talk a lot about raw log exports and the need to keep jobs in our communities by processing our resources in our communities as much as possible. We can't do everything, we realise that, but as much as possible, let's try and process in our communities. So people are out harvesting. What we're doing is, instead of processing in our communities, we're exporting. And on this side of the House, we've used the example of how much was exported last year. 5.5 million cubic metres, Madam Speaker. Say it quickly, we won't notice it, 5.5 million cubic metres. Full logging trucks from here, nose to tail, to Thunder Bay. Madam Speaker, that people on both sides of the House regularly drive Highway 1. I know that. They drive to their own constituencies, they drive along, they're going out for whatever, they may be out driving out to the by-elections at the moment out along Highway 1 and see it. Can they picture that, nose to tail? Nose to tail from here all the way to Thunder Bay. It's an extraordinary image. And there is, Madam Speaker, as well as the rampant logging without putting investment back into our communities, there is the awareness that this is going so fast that I talk to people in my communities who are logging, whose parents logged, whose grandparents logged, who've been proud, they want their kids to carry on logging, who are saying, this shouldn't be cut now. It's far too soon. This should be what my grandkids are cutting, not me. It's a willful destruction of our resource. And, Madam Speaker, it is our resource. So much of BC's land is Crown lands. And when we talk about Crown lands, we're talking about our public lands that you, Madam Speaker, own, I own, members on the other side of the House own, members next to me own, my neighbours own, First Nations own. This is ours. The trees on those public lands are ours, Madam Speaker. What right does this government have to squander that resource? In 11 years, to kill that resource. They have left, Madam Speaker, a devastating legacy, which is why I think that they're being quiet. Let's not talk about it. Let's not let people know what we have left, what we're leaving, because it is going to be a